Was it completely organic? It was. And where we went, was completely so from Sunset Office, we felt we were doing the.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in today. I was not very comfortable, I guess. I feel like I'm sitting on top of you. I've got a longtime friend, mentor, and somebody that has been a real guide for us in the way we set some of our companies up because of the way he did it and had such a positive influence with everybody involved. So I wanted to come in and talk about how he started his first company, and that is Alan Long. Alan, thank you for coming in.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You bet. I've been dying to do this for a long time. So
Here we are.
and I think we're going to find that a lot of your old residential agents are going to want to tune into this as well.
Oh, that'd be nice to see them. Hi, everybody.
Every time I run, Alan used to own DBL Realtors. Were you at 16 offices?
We were 12.
12 offices, all West LA, Hollywood. You went out to Palm Springs even.
We had 2 offices in Palm Springs, and the rest were here in the Los Angeles area. We had 800 agents, and we were doing about $5 billion a year, which back in 2005, $5 billion a year was a lot of inventory. Now it's not that much inventory because
Well,
prices are so high. But in those days, doing $5 billion for a company our size with our average sales price was pretty tremendous.
It was. It was just impressive the way the company was set up. Alan, when I first came and interviewed with you, you were doing something completely different in that every agent had a computer at their desk. Now, every company that I had been around before they had the computer room, and I just thought that's brilliant to make information so accessible to these agents. And I'm sure there's a lot of other things you were doing I didn't notice, but that was one thing I thought, now this is the winning attitude. You're giving everybody the tools to be successful. And if you run into a DBL agent to this day, and I think it's every Sotheby's office here in Southern California is the old DBL, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. If you run into those old DBL agents, they will say, I miss DBL. And so that's something you should be very proud of because those were some great agents that really worked well together.
Well, it's interesting you bring up the computer thing because I think it was probably the early 90s that we were putting computers on everybody's desk. And you'd walk into one of our offices and the difference between it and other real estate offices is there was a computer on everybody's desk.
Right.
And in those days they were pretty big.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of hardware sitting on the desk. But what was interesting is nobody was at that time in the early 90s emailing. And I had a lot of resistance from my agents in trying to communicate with them through email. They didn't want to do it. They were so used to getting voicemail blasts.
Sure.
And so when they would check their voicemails, they would then get the blast about something. So in order to convince them, what I would do is once a week, I would randomly pick somebody for lunch. And so I would send out an email like on Tuesday morning saying, Joe Killinger, you have randomly been selected to have lunch with me at the Polo Lounge at the Beverly Hills Hotel Friday at noon. The only caveat is in order to claim your prize, you need to contact me back within an hour from this email. So I did that to encourage everybody to check their emails. Now, let's say you didn't check your email and you didn't within an hour get back to me. I would then send out another email blast saying, well, Joe, you missed your shot. You didn't get back to me within an hour, and so now we're not having lunch, and I guess I've got to go on to the contestant number 2.
Okay.
And little by little, that really got everybody to check their email on an hourly basis because they just might be going to lunch with me. And the worst part was if you weren't, I pretty much let everybody in the whole network know that
Sure.
you're not checking your email and you've screwed up lunch, a free lunch at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And everybody wants to go to lunch at the Beverly Hills Hotel.
I don't think I ever got one of those invites, by the way.
Really?
So
Well, there you go. But that, I think you
Hold it
came
against you.
once we were pretty much in the
we
whole
did.
swing of things. I mean, I had Elaine Young, for instance. She was the hardest one to get her to use her email.
Oh.
But the thought that she missed a lunch at the Beverly Hills Hotel, she finally started to check her email. So
It's a special place, and yeah, that's for sure.
You know, the computers, and one of the reasons why I wanted to put the computers in is so that we could communicate with each other in a more efficient manner
Yeah.
than we were communicating with each other. And that was kind of the reason why I wanted to start DBL. Is the brokerage that I came from in Beverly Hills, they didn't work together. They worked independently to the point where if I knew about a house and I didn't have anybody to sell that house to, I was not going to tell you about it, because Lord knows I might find a buyer for it in the next 3 months to come, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't want you to know about it. And I'd say, the reality being, I probably would never find a buyer for it.
Right.
And had I have shared that information, and then you have shared information with me, we could have had a much more cooperative business. So that's what we really founded DBL on, was the concept of sharing information. And that's why we had a little game that I insisted each office play during their office meetings, and it was called Hot Properties. And I don't know if you remember, but what we would do is
I
we'd
do.
go around the room and we'd make everybody nominate what the hottest piece of property they saw during the previous week to the meeting. And we'd have somebody from staff writing down each one of the addresses. So you'd come up and you'd say, well, I saw 1234 Sunset Plaza Drive. It's listed for $1,599,000. It's 6 bedrooms, killer view, wonderful pool, blah, 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 and we'd write it down. So we'd go all around the room, and we'd have maybe about 7 or 8 suggestions. We would then read them all off, and everybody would vote on what they thought was the hottest of the hot properties nominated, and whoever won hot property for that day would get $50 cash for playing the game. But what was so important is then we would take that whole list of all the nominations and the winner, and we would email it to everybody in all the offices, so
Right.
that you had a list of what 75 people in the office looking for the last 7 days had thought were the hottest properties there. And you'd find that, you
That's
know what,
brilliant.
you'd sell a piece of property, and then the next week you'd nominate something and I'd sell it. And the next week Jane would nominate something and Pete would sell it. Point being is, we found out that by working together, we were so much more effective than by working individually.
Yeah.
And that was the whole reason why we really wanted to start DBL, was the concept of, to share my information and you to share your information with me would make us, we would all win from that situation.
Yep.
So that's what we did, and that's what the computers greatly helped to facilitate, was that communication amongst all of us.
Well, and also the interaction, coming from, I was with another company before coming on with you guys, and you'd sit in, I would go down, and I was running our auction division, but I would go down and sit in the residential.
Wouldn't have been Fred Sands, would it? Not that we want to make any.
It would have been.
May he rest in
Thank you,
peace.
Fred. May you rest in peace, yes. But I would go down, and to get people to actually interact in those meetings, those residential office meetings, was very difficult for them. Malcolm McEwen is somebody that was pretty good at it, and Malcolm, if you're watching, hello. But I go to a DBL office, and there was a lot of interaction. I guess I didn't realize what you guys were doing with that, but that would create a lot of that interaction, and I think that's what makes everybody want to work together. So, and that's something I can see in commercial real estate. Probably need to start. Everybody in commercial real estate kind of keeps their cards close to their chest. I think if they start
Right.
sharing that information, they'd start seeing that everybody would make a lot more money. So
Yep.
that is something we're working on. What was your plan? I mean, where did you open your first office?
First office was on Beverly Drive, South Beverly Drive in Beverly Hills.
Okay.
275 South Beverly Drive, 2-story walk-up. And at the time, South Beverly Drive, south of Wilshire, you might as well have been in Siberia.
Yeah.
There was nothing down there.
Yeah.
There was Larry Parker Deli down there, 24-hour deli,
Right.
and us, and that was it. And then lo and behold, within about 6 months of us moving in, the very first California Pizza Kitchen opened on South
Oh,
Beverly Drive,
nice.
and that was it. Then South Beverly Drive took off. And suddenly it was the place to be, and people thought we were just amazing to be down there, but that was our first office. And then we opened the office on Sunset Boulevard in Doheny,
Okay.
next to the Citibank.
I remember that.
That used to be a John Douglas office,
Right.
and they had left it for a larger space across the street. And so that office was sitting vacant for about 4 years.
Oh,
Nobody
wow.
wanted that space. And it was just completely set up as a real estate office. So I had asked John over and over again if he'd lease it to me, but it took him a long time until he finally agreed. And he left the desks and the phones.
plug and play,
it was,
huh?
Yeah, it was just a perfect setup for us, and worked really well. And we worked out of there until we grew out of it. And then
Mhm.
we took his space that he had taken across the street because we had taken so much of his market share away. He had no
Yeah.
agents to fill in anymore. So as he was downsizing, we were upsizing. So we kept taking a couple of his offices here and there. But
I think he
and
did
may
okay.
he rest in peace too. Yes.
Yeah. What was your growth plan? I mean, you one office from that first office. Did you plan on 12 offices, or did you just as you go?
No, it was a completely organic growth.
It was.
And where we went and when we went, it was completely organic.
Mhm.
So from the Sunset office, we felt we were doing a great amount of business in Los Feliz.
Okay.
And we thought, okay, well, then let's open an office in Los Feliz, and we did. We never opened an office until the previous office we opened was breaking even. So we never over-encumbered the company, and frankly, we never borrowed one penny in order to open all those offices and run all those offices.
Really?
You know, we did it simply on all internal monies.
And because the way it's going today, some of these companies are out there just buying everybody. I don't.
Yes, I never really liked the idea of buying real estate agents. I think that's, I don't know if that's really a very good thing to do. But it is being done today because everybody wants to market share without thinking of profitability.
Right.
So we were always looking at both. How do we get market share and how do we remain profitable? So that was kind of another tenet of ours that we used a lot.
Mm. You, which I firmly believe in too. That's why this office is where it's at, and our next office is when it's time to grow. We'll sit down and take a look at it. But how did you, to grow the way you did? How did you go out and recruit new agents or top talent? I guess.
I think recruiting was one of my fortes. It
Okay.
still is. First of all, I would start by inviting them to the Beverly Hills Hotel for lunch at the Polo Lounge.
Damn it! I never got invited to these.
And again, very few people would turn down that lunch.
Yeah, I don't blame them.
Then I would not bring the conversation really to recruiting until after we finished the meal.
Right.
Let everybody enjoy the lunch, enjoy themselves. And then after lunch was over, I would simply ask the agent there how happy they were. And a lot of them were very happy at the offices they were at.
Right.
And then I would say to them, okay, you're happy where you're at, but in a perfect world, if there was one thing you could change, what is it that you would change where you're at? And everybody always has one thing that they want to change. And that was the thing that hopefully we were doing a really good job at.
Yeah.
And I could point out to the agent how that was no longer going to be an issue. So that was really the strong part. And then the other thing was I was always available to my agents 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And when they called me, I picked up my phone.
Yeah.
You didn't get my secretary. You didn't get David Parker, our wonderful office manager, or Chatty, our operation person.
Yeah.
You got me directly.
Yeah.
And the agents appreciated that. And they knew that it didn't matter if it was a Saturday or Sunday, because my philosophy was if you call me, you need me then. You don't need me tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning when it's convenient for me. And I found that if I took your call when you called, I could answer your question and we could get it done and dusted right then and there. Instead of you leaving me a message, me calling you back, maybe me leaving you a message, then I don't know where, if it's gone out of control by the time 24 hours has come and gone that I've gotten a hold of you. So I found that way I was able to deal with 800 agents as effectively as possible. So I knew that if you called me, it was important and you needed me, and so I took the phone. So that's what kept agents at our company. We had very little attrition from DBL. It was kind of once you came to DBL, you didn't leave because you knew you had the support staff.
Well, you didn't want to. I mean, when we were going back and forth, Alan and I was at a different company. Alan called me a couple times. I think your third call was, I'm not going to call again. So and I'm like, okay. But it wasn't, I mean, obviously, yes, I was really nervous about change. We'd gone through a lot. Fred Sands had sold the company, and we were going through a lot of transitions, and I was just scared to death. I didn't know what to do. So, but the agents that were already working for you were also your biggest cheerleaders, the company cheerleaders, your cheerleaders. Everybody spoke highly about you. Accessibility was a big thing. And so, it was just that really made a big difference. And, so Casey, Lisa Kirshner, all would say, don't screw this up, you need to get on board. So having the right company culture, I think, really was a big thing. And, it sure would help find some good talent too that way, because when you've got your team out there pushing your company, that's huge. When you brought in a newer agent, and this is something that we, with our commercial real estate company, dabble with, training new agents, how did you guys handle that? You brought them in, did you put them with a senior, or did you, okay, you did.
They were all mentored.
Okay, they were all mentored.
We didn't
That
have
I couldn't remember.
we didn't have an official formal training program.
Okay,
So they were all pretty much mentored for your first 3 transactions.
okay.
And then we would periodically have all office meetings where we would cover points, in fact, and do a lot of role playing. I felt
Okay.
that in the writing of an offer,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know everybody was writing an offer the way I wanted them to write an offer. In the presentation of the offer, I wanted to know that everybody was presenting the offer the way I wanted them to present the offer.
Right.
So I did a lot of role playing with people on how to write a purchase contract and how to present a purchase contract.
Okay.
Nowadays, nobody presents their purchase contracts, and I find it's a terrible, terrible situation that the market's in, that we don't sit down with the seller and explain to them who our client is and what our client's needs are.
Losing the human touch.
It's just so much easier to say no, and if I'm in front of you and you're having a problem with one of the points on the contract, I can ask you, well, what's the problem you have? And then my client may be very flexible to whatever that problem is, and we can take care of it right then and there.
Okay.
Instead of you generating another contract, and then I have to review the contract, and other things can happen during that time period, another buyer can come on the scene at that
Right.
point, so it's not a really a good way that we do business nowadays.
Yeah.
And it should be taken care of. And then I also wanted to instruct people on the listing presentation. I wanted to know when you were in somebody's living room Thursday at 9 o'clock what you were telling them. And so I came up with pretty much a good script for all of those. And I would explain to the agents you can deviate from it depending on what your style is.
Sure.
But here's the basics of how I present an offer, how I write an offer, and how I take a listing. And I felt if I at least armed you with those 3 talents, you pretty much could do anything, and it could be fairly dangerous.
That's powerful stuff. Now, how long did you own DBL?
From
many years?
1987 to 2005, so 18 years.
You had a good run.
Yeah.
When, what made you decide it was time to sell? This incredible offer came in, or you just thought, you know what, I want to do something else with my life? What was the big aha moment?
An incredible offer came in. We weren't
Okay.
on the market, and Sotheby's from New York called, and they said, look, we love all of your locations. I was very specific about where our offices were. They had to be in neighborhoods that I enjoyed going to because I knew I'd have to interact with the agents and their clients in those areas.
Mhm.
So we were, in the Malibu and the Palisades and Santa Monica and Brentwood and the Sunset Strip and Los Feliz and Palm Springs and Palm Desert and Silver Lake. And these were all areas and Beverly Hills, 2 offices in Beverly Hills, that I enjoyed going to and driving to. Many of my managers lived in the Valley, and a lot of their agents did business in the Valley. And they asked me for years and years to open an office in the Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been very profitable, and we were doing a significant amount of business there. It's just, the architecture never really appealed to me in the Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to call me on a listing appointment, and it was a house in the Valley, and you want me to come with you on a listing appointment, I couldn't seem excited. I
Right.
couldn't seem interested.
Can't sell.
But you
Yeah.
take me to a wonderful vintage little house off Melrose, 1920s
Yeah.
bungalow, I can get inspired and interested in all this. So I was very specific about where we opened our office, and Sotheby said, we really like all your locations, where you were very specific, and we really like the way your offices are done. We didn't have an in-house attorney, but we had an in-house designer.
Yeah.
And he literally would go from office to office and just freshen them up.
Right.
Change the art, change the vases, paint this, paint that, make sure the carpets were clean. All of our offices were in great shape because I wanted you to so enjoy the experience of you coming to the office
Yeah.
that I wanted it to look better and be more tasteful maybe than even where you lived at that point. That it was really somewhere that you wanted to come and you wanted to spend time in. And so all our offices were designed like that, and that really helped. So Sotheby said they liked our locations and they liked the way your offices look. Would you like to sell? I proceeded to, of course, hang up the phone
Sure.
because this was 2005. The market was going gangbusters. We were making so much money from each one of the offices.
Yeah.
We almost didn't even know what to do with the money.
Right.
It was that robust. So they called again, and once again I hung up the phone, although they did offer a lot more money than the first time. Then they called me the third time with a really ridiculous offer, I thought. And I said to them, well, the problem is I'm in my 40s and I'm really too young to retire. They're like, no, you can stay on and run as president of Southern California,
Okay.
and we'll still buy your company. So at that point, with all the offices, opening offices and increasing overhead is a lot like gaining weight. It's a half pound this year, it's a half pound that year, and then at some point you stare in the mirror and you're like, who is this 800-pound gorilla that's on the other side of the mirror at that point?
You bet.
And that's what the company had become. It had
Yeah.
become an 800-pound gorilla
Yeah.
with an overhead of maybe $3 million a month.
Yeah.
And you have to sell a lot of houses for the brokerage's portion of commissions to at least equal $3 million every month, because as you know, the real estate agent takes the lion's share of the
Sure.
commission. So it took $5 billion worth of houses to support a $3 million. And so I was concerned that we would not, if the market turned, which 2 years later it did turn dramatically, we wouldn't be able to support that $3 million a month nut, along with the wonderful offer that Sotheby's had given me, along with the fact that I could still stay on the company for 3 years and run it as president. So that's how it came, that the sale came to be. Otherwise, there may still be a DBL
Right.
if it wasn't for Sotheby's, because we weren't on the market for sale.
Yeah. Now, how many years has that been now since you sold?
Well, God, 13 years now, my goodness.
Oh my
Time
God.
flies. Time does fly.
That just seems like it was like 3-4 years ago to me. It just-
Yes, now I've subsequently opened another real estate office in Park City, Utah.
Okay.
I had decided to buy a ski place, become a ski bum, and retire in Park City, Utah. Well, that lasted about, a year.
Yeah.
And then I fell into a commercial opportunity
Right.
to buy some historic commercial property on a wonderful little plaza next to it, the chairlift, and to buy this shack. And the nice thing about the shack is it's attached to a silver mine that looks right into the mountain. And somebody said, we have tentative plans to develop this shack into a real estate office. Would you have any interest in that?
Well, it just so happens.
Yeah, it just so happens. I've done this
Little-
about 14 times before.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got a hold of the shack, and it took me 4 years to build the shack into a real estate office because it was historic. I had to deal with the Historic Preservation Board. Because it was in a HOA, I had to deal with the Homeowners Association.
Right.
And just the regular Department of Building and Safety in Park
Sure,
City.
especially with the historical. If it,
It took me 4 years.
Yeah.
It took me 4 years of doing everything. So we got that done. So once I had a real estate office built, of course, I needed to have a real estate company, so I
Right.
opened a real estate company 3 years ago. It was a very humbling adventure because coming to Park City, all of my history and all of my
Everyone was here.
experiences in Southern California meant nothing to them in
Yeah.
Park City whatsoever.
Yeah.
It was a lot of like, so who are you again? Would you
Yeah.
explain that to me again? So it was rather humbling starting at the very
Sure.
beginning. And I hired 4 brand new agents who knew absolutely nothing about real estate.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was interesting to go back to that point in my career
Sure.
where I was used to at DBL, you guys calling me with questions
Mhm.
and me helping you through your transactions.
Right.
Now, these agents had no questions because they had no clients, so they had no transactions.
Yeah, they didn't know what to ask. If they,
And they didn't know what to ask, even if they had a client. So I had to go back to teach them, how do you create clients? How do you create your book of clients?
Right.
How do you create a circle of influence when you have no influence anywhere?
Right.
So it was really going way, way back to basics. And then after I taught them how to get clients, then I taught them what to do with the client after they
Right.
got the client. So it was quite a learning experience for me and for them, and great. And once again, I'm sitting there, telephone rings, somebody says, we really like the location of your office, and we think it's the coolest office we've ever seen.
Right.
Would you like to sell it? And I was like, well, it's about a year or two premature to what I want to do, but it was such a perfect fit, and they were such the right real estate company, and my agents became their real estate agents. The
Okay.
transition was really smooth, so it really turned out really well. So once again, I am out of a real estate company and out of a job. So that's why I have time to be here filming this with you.
Well, yeah, if you want to
Otherwise,
do
I
investments
have any
or commercial real estate, we can find a place for you. I mean, it was really, I was thinking about what you said about the interior design of the real estate offices. They were all different, but very cool in their own way. Because if you look at your Pasadena office and then you look at the Santa Monica office that we were in that was something. But another thing you did that I don't know why when I was listening to you talk, the one key open all offices.
Correct.
That I thought was.
Correct.
That was thinking of the smallest things possible.
Correct. Well, again, I always used to tell the real estate agents, there's only 3 answers to 3 questions you need to know, and if you know the answers to these 3 questions, you will be hugely successful. And the first question was, what's available? You
Mhm.
need to know what's available to sell so that when you find a client, you can tell them what it is they should buy. You need to know what things around it have sold for,
Mhm.
so you can determine value. That's the second question. And the third question is, where did I park my car? So if you know the
Yeah.
answers to those 3 questions, your geography is limitless to the state
Right.
of California.
Right.
But you need to know the answers to those 3 questions in
Mhm.
order to be effective. So my thought was, if your office is in Santa Monica
Mhm.
and you have a transaction in the Hollywood Hills,
Yeah.
that your key to your Santa Monica office should open the door to the Sunset office in the Hollywood Hills. So if you needed to go in there with your client to use the conference room, and you could log on to your computer from our computer that was
Yeah.
in the conference room, which was another thing nobody else had, you'd be able to do that. And it also got that whole idea that we're one big family out there, that it's not this office against that office. And I wanted the manager from the Sunset office to know you and you to know that manager, which is why when we did our all office meetings, I would introduce all the managers to everybody every time we did our all office meetings, and encourage some of them to do presentations so that you guys would really get to know them. So I looked at it more as an extended family than I did as really a business.
Yeah.
And I think that was also one of the reasons why we were so successful.
Well, that is really where it's going now. Is everybody's trying to work together, and we're trying to push that into commercial real estate, and we're having huge success through our commercial brokers international. It's working very well for us, and I just think that's where the future of real estate is. It's not this hiding. I've got this deal I'm not going to tell anybody about. I think it's letting everybody know that you have this deal, and if you call me and you're another agent, I will even tell you that, hey, have you seen this property, because this fits exactly what you're looking for. So all boats rise that way. It's a win-win. It sounds really simple sitting here talking to you, everything you did from the one key to with the offices, because just so you know, I ran Alan's commercial division for him with George Pino. I would be in Santa Monica, and I had a couple deals in Pasadena, and a lot of these commercial deals, we'd have to go up there, we'd be up there on the weekend and do an inspection. That I could go in that office and work. It saved me a lot of time. It's just being able to get into that office and do the work, and everybody knew. I didn't know those people, but if I had a key and there was somebody else in there working, they knew it was okay. So that was brilliant. Creating an environment where everybody wants to work, that's huge. And these things seem so simple, but I'm sure when you were doing it, it took a lot. So sometimes it's simple things, I guess, right?
And I don't know if you remember our stock plan that we had. I'm sure you got a check after I sold DBL. And the stock plan was really quite simple. You couldn't buy the stock. The stock was awarded to you from DBL.
Right.
It was awarded to all our key employees based on their tenure. And the longer they were with us, the more stock they received. And as a real estate agent, as soon as you had made $1 million for yourself, you were now going to be vested in stock.
Right.
So it could take you 3 years to make $1 million, making $300,000 a year, or 1 year if you had a really big
Yep.
year. But anyway, when you got to that threshold of making $1 million at DBL, you were gifted with stock. Every year after that, based on your performance, you were gifted with more stock.
Right.
And the point was that at some point, yes, we would sell DBL. And when we did, whatever we sold DBL for, you were going to get a proportionate share of that, depending on how much stock you had accumulated. And I can tell you, when we sold DBL, I think we ended up paying out about $3 million
Yeah.
to employees and agents, and some people got checks for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 based on the amount of stock that they had accumulated, which compared to my two predecessors, John Douglas and Fred Sands, may they rest in peace, when they sold their company, all you got was a poke in the eye.
You were out of a job.
So, and out of a
Yeah,
job.
I remember that.
So at DBL, the concept was, and we felt that becoming Sotheby's was a really well-respected, probably the best
Good
name in
brand.
the business. So not only were you going to get a check when we sold, but we felt like it was also an upgrade to the brand name, and that everybody would benefit from all that. So it must have worked, because 13 years later, those agents are still talking to me.
They're still talking to you.
I see them
every time.
and fondly they're still talking.
Yeah,
So
well, we get referrals from them still. Now they're scattered around with all these different companies, and they remember George and I from being at DBL, and they refer deals in, and it's always part of the topic. Now, one thing that I want to make sure everybody understood, it wasn't just real estate agents. This was employees that got checks when you sold as well.
Correct.
So some of them employees got a nice check as well. So that was special, and something that I think everybody should take a look at if you're looking to start your own real estate company. I know we've been going kind of long here, so I just kind of want to wrap it up. But what is the number one thing you attribute to all your success?
It's interesting, everybody always asks me that question,
Yeah.
thinking that it's going to be one client, one transaction, one office, one agent. It's the theme to Nick Siegel's book, if you read his book,
Okay.
and that is a series of little things done impeccably, consistently, will have a great effect. So it was just a series of little things being done as impeccably and as perfectly as I could do them. And that over a career of 13, 14, 15 years of having a business creates a major impact.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to, I don't know if Nick's book is online or it's just in paperback or...
Both.
Okay, then what we'll do is we'll put a link to it, and so we can push out for Nick, because Nick is also a dear friend of Alan and mine. So is there any closing thoughts that you had that you want to, any words of wisdom for everybody, or?
It's just all about practice. I find that I am still constantly learning things because I'm out there still practicing the craft.
Yeah.
I mean, I did my very first reverse 1031 tax-deferred exchange. After 40 years in the business, I've finally done a reverse 1031 tax-deferred exchange. I've done a lot of forward tax-deferred exchange, but this was my very first. So anyway, point being is I'm still learning after 40 years, and it's because I'm still practicing the craft. So I can just tell you that the practice is directly related to how good of an agent you're actually going to be.
Yeah.
So it's just all about putting somebody in your car and driving them around and showing them houses and sitting in their living room on Thursday night at 9 o'clock telling them how much their house is worth.
Right.
The more times you find yourself doing that, the more successful you're going to be in the business.
I agree very much. Well, thank you very much, Alan.
You're welcome. That's it.
Thank you for tuning in.
everybody.
We're going to, if you have questions for Alan, you can reach out to me and I'll make sure we get to him with your questions. If you could also please subscribe and like the video, that would be great as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.